Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to today's community briefing. My name is Gregory Sneed, and we are glad you're here. Being joined with Crystal Mitchell and Stephen Turner and Robin Billups. We are the co-hosts here of community briefing, bringing you live information every Thursday, except for a couple of Thursdays like Christmas and New Year's coming up, but every Thursday at 11 o'clock Pacific time. So, my name is Gregory Sneed. I'm CEO of Lifesaver Financial Services, and I am now, with pleasure, to turn over to the queen of our community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. New Year's is not here yet, but soon to be. But we won't be here, so we're going to tell you Happy New Year's now. So I hope you're enjoying your holiday season and getting all ready for your friends and family in a couple of weeks. So welcome to the community briefing. I am Crystal Mitchell. I am the co-director of Recycling Dollars, as well as the inspiration, yes, behind the community briefing. Just felt we needed a platform where we all get together and introduce the stakeholders to the community and the community to the stakeholders so that we can close out our silos and we can start working like a very connected community. That's my utopia, and I'm going to stick with that. And so we do have a great show here today. I'm excited for our guests. We've been trying to get around for a little while and conflicts of schedule. But I do want to thank our team, which obviously Greg just told you who it is, himself and Robin Billups. She's not with us today, but she is here in spirit. And Mr. Stephen Turner, who is our producer, and myself. This platform is powered by and supported by Recycling Black Dollars and the BBA, the Black Business Association. Miss Sarah Harris, she did a fantastic job with her Christmas party last night. We had a good time. Some of us have never seen each other, and so on video, and so we got to see each other and network and socialize, and it was fantastic, and we had a good time. And I think, Sarah, that was a good idea to have that at the new townhouse with Ms.
The
Ron.
new townhouse.
I think you should do that every year. That makes partying so much easier.
Yes, Roz definitely knows how to put on a party.
Right, exactly. So that was good. So if you guys didn't show up, you missed something. So you want to put it on your calendar next year for Sarah's holiday party. We had fun. And so we do want to thank them both. We're also monetarily powered by, sponsored by Los Angeles LDC and Southern California Edison, Wells Fargo Bank, Urban Excellence, PCR, and Southern SoCal Gas. So we want to thank all of them for supporting us so that we can be here. And if anyone of you want to support us, that's fine. We would love to have you to do that. And we'll give you a shout out for your business and so forth as well. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Greg, and I'm going to let him he's going to introduce our guests.
Right on, right on, right on. Okay, our guest today is Careshia Moore. That's with 4 syllables, Careshia Moore. And she is labeled as a truly modern Renaissance woman. And she is the former president of the CEO of Usher's New Looks. And but she is now president and CEO of, that was up until August, right? And then now she's doing something now. She's president and CEO at Compete to Succeed Educational Resources. And that's what she's here to share with us about. She's done a number of things. She mentioned she had headed up Usher's nonprofit. She's been with a national program director, Nova Southeastern University as a lecturer. She's an attorney, and looks like she was licensed in Georgia and Florida. We didn't get a chance to find out where she's from, but I imagine she's from the Georgia southeastern part of the United States. Yes? No?
I am from Miami, Florida.
Miami, Florida.
Born and
Okay.
raised. Yes.
Right. Born and raised in Miami, Florida. And so now Florida, Atlanta, and you get to go home pretty easily from Atlanta, I'm sure. Okay.
Yeah. Except for that, it's a 9-hour drive through the state almost, but yeah. I mean, Florida's long. If you've ever done that drive, it's long.
Like Texas. Like
I have
Texas.
driven. I've driven from Key West to New York City.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Now that's a long drive. Hmm. Hmm.
Multiple times. So yeah, that's and I've driven a lot from Atlanta to New York. So anyway, it is my pleasure to welcome to the virtual stage Careshia Moore.
Well, it is such an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for that introduction, Greg. Thank you, Stephen. I still remember the night that we met at the event and you came back and told me about this community briefing. And Crystal and Robin, thank you all for the work that you do to create this platform. I tell you what, I have watched several of the past episodes now, and what you are doing is phenomenal and it's needed. And I laughed because, especially now, but I think over the last year, with just some of the things that I'm involved in, my kids, I have two kids. One is a freshman at the University of Chicago, one is 14. And so sometimes they're in the car when I'm on conference calls or Zoom calls, and they call them the Black calls, or the power to the people calls. And that's yeah, that's right. They're like, oh, you're on one of your power to the people calls. And I think that they would count this as one of those as well if they were here, just listening to some of the past episodes. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here. I think what you're doing is disseminating information that is so needed by our community with all the guests that you have on. It's the kind of information that we need for forward progress for our community. It's the kind of information that is needed in order for us to continue to build and thrive as a community. And I'm just honored to be amongst you all. I feel like it's family. So we're just going to have a conversation. I'll tell you a little bit about my story and what I'm doing. Yes, virtual hugs for everyone. And then we'll go from there. As you talked about, I mean, my passion is education, and it started pretty early for me. There's a quote that Oprah, I went to see her talk at one of her tours, and she said, when she was younger, her teachers, she would always get in trouble for talking in class. And lo and behold, what did she end up, making her mark in, right? Being a talk show host, news anchor. And she said, your purpose often, if you look back over your life, there's a thread that kind of goes through and it shows you where exactly you should be. And I would say from a young child, definitely as a teenager, was always involved with education, mentoring folks, even when I didn't know that this was going to be my career path. I think about even high school. I had an internship. They offered me the option to just do a half day of classes, and I'm like, sign me up, right? But I found myself in a classroom mentoring students and teaching them and working with a second grade teacher for the entire year. And at that time, I did not necessarily want to be an educator, but as I walk through life and walk through that journey, and I am a person of faith, I do believe in purpose in life and finding out what that is. I know what my purpose is, and it is to help uplift our community, children and families alike. Through education. And so my first job was teaching. I was teaching. I gotten a master's in education, endorsed to teach gifted students. My first job was in Naples, Florida, Collier County. And if anyone knows anything about Naples, at that time it was the richest city per capita. I mean, we're talking Vanderbilt's, Johnson and Johnson, those folks. My first school was in the middle of a golf community, and my students went to private islands on the weekend. And when I got there, they said, "Well, actually, we're going to have you at two schools, one in Naples, Florida, at this particular school that I just described, and then one in Immokalee, Florida." Now, not many people have heard of Immokalee, but it is a small migrant community where it's primarily Haitian and Mexican population. Parents primarily are working seasonal crops. They may go from Beaufort, South Carolina to Immokalee during the course of the school year, sort of following the crops, if you will. And school was done very differently. The interesting thing about that was that I was teaching gifted students. All of my students were high IQ. And what I realized even at that young age was that my students in Immokalee were on a very different trajectory. And it was not because of reading, writing, and math. They could do it all. It wasn't because of ability. They were creative. They were problem solvers. It was because of access, opportunity, and exposure. Nothing more than that. It was the fact that they were more in a more impoverished area, right? They didn't have the same resources. They had to travel 25 minutes to maybe get to a museum, whereas my students in Naples, they had every asset right there to them at their fingertips. And so I said, there is something fundamentally not right about this. And that really set me on my trajectory as far as educational equity and finding out what else needs to be done outside of the classroom to make sure that our students are able to soar and reach their potential and increase their social and economic mobility, just like others are. And so, following that, I went to law school because I always say, what do you want to do when you want to solve a problem? You go to law school. Not true. It's an expensive way to do it, but that's what I did, right? With behold on behalf of thinking about how do I really solve systems? How do I help to reform the education system? Because I literally lived it every day. Every other day, I was going in between schools where one, I had every resource available to me, and the other, not so much. Now, there has over the 20 years since I've been doing that, there's been some changes, right? The school buildings have been updated. They've gotten some more resources in Immokalee, but there are still gaps that exist. And I think you find that not just in rural communities, but in urban communities throughout. Depending on the zip code, sometimes our schools are not doing as well as they could be. And so that is where I really wanted to make my mark. That's where I want to leave my legacy. And so looking at that. So I practiced law for a little while, still focused on education, involved civically and in the community, working on education initiatives on different boards, started a mentoring program. And then ultimately I said, you know what, there is work for me to do outside of the four walls of this law office. And so I resigned. I resigned twice in a year because the first time I got a little nervous. I said, what am I doing? Let me figure this out. But ultimately, I knew in my heart, I knew that I will say God was calling me to do something differently. And that's exactly what happened. A week later, I was at an event for a nonprofit called Usher's New Look, which I had just heard about. And really, it was through divine intervention that I ended up being there. But what I experienced and what I saw, I said, oh my goodness, every student that I have worked with over my time, whether it was in the school system, by this time I had worked with students who were involved in the justice system, they need this program. And so I signed up to volunteer. I signed up to volunteer to help the program. They were in the process of moving from operating a summer camp to year-round programming. Usher had started this organization so that he could give back. A little known history is that his mom took him to Judge Glenda Hatchett's courtroom when he was 19 years old. And she wanted him to think about how he was going to give back to the community as his celebrity was rising. And what he saw in that juvenile proceeding was that these young people, they were leading, but they were just leading in the wrong way. And if they had some intervention, if they had a new look on life, they could become whatever it is that they wanted to become. And so he helped to build an organization that did just that. We took our four pillars of talent, education, career, and service. So we help young people identify their talents and gift, identify their spark, cultivate that through education, expose them to different careers that would allow them to use their talents and gifts, and then thinking about service. How do you give back to your community, starting right now as a young person in a way that is authentic to you? And so I was able to volunteer with the organization, started working, doing different contracts programmatically for them. I tell other people, I say I started giving them job descriptions of things that I could do to help support the organization. And one thing led to another. And so I was at the organization for 11 years. The last 6 years, I was president and CEO and was able to grow the work that we were doing, support young people in doing various things that they themselves may not have even thought about. At that organization, I was able to see the benefit of having private sector and philanthropy come together to wrap around our young people, to walk alongside our schools and provide the support that they needed, that our teachers may not be able to provide because they're bogged down in testing and other things. Our young people needed more than the arithmetic and the reading and preparing for tests, they needed to know what it means to be involved in AI. They needed to know what an actuary is or what it means to work for City Hall and all of these things. They needed to know what it looks like to network and how to fill out scholarship applications so that you can fund your next phase of education. And those are all of the things that we were able to do. And it really was just a dream job. Through that work, I was able to see, first generation college students go on and work for Fortune 100 companies. I was able to see, we did a financial literacy curriculum, and I remember we were in Little Rock, Arkansas, doing a program there in conjunction with the University of Arkansas Medical School. And this young group of guys, they were doing the budgeting activity that was set before them that we had created. And the young man looks up at his friend and he says, I get it. They're teaching us about our future before we get there. And when I tell you, I said, that is exactly it, right? Now, imagine if every student had that. Our schools cannot do it all. But if we pull in the public sector, private sector, philanthropy, we can support our young people in upward mobility. I was watching the episode with George Fraser on there talking about networking, right? Those are some of the things that we taught our young people. They could come on this Zoom and talk to each one of you. They could meet you at your office and tell you their elevator pitch and get you thinking, how can I sign this young person up as an intern or even hire them? Those are the things that we were able to do through that organization. And like I said, it was the honor of my life to be there. But what I knew about a year and a half ago, that focus on education, that focus on how do we redesign schools to make sure that we're impacting young people who may not be in a space where there is an Usher's New Look. How do we support them and their families where they are? And so I ultimately made the decision at the top of this year that I was going to move on and build a practice that would focus on research and development into education reform and system reform and school redesign and reschooling, but also supporting other youth development organizations to help them with strategic planning and best practices to support our young people. I think about if we did not know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but November 5th told us that, you know, if we're going to see progress, we've got to do it ourselves, right? We can't leave that to anyone else. And that just really, the timing of that for me, I was like, I'm in the right space. I'm in a space where we have to take control of our young people's education. We can't leave it to the devices of folks who are saying we want to dismantle the Department of Education or institutions of higher ed that are saying, we're rolling back DE&I initiatives, even though they still have only 5% Black enrollment in the schools. What about schools, districts where 40% of high schools, there are no high school students who are counted to be proficient in math? We have school districts right here in Atlanta where you have 22% proficiency of Black students in literacy, right? And the list goes on and on. We have entire state education departments that are saying Black history, or what they call CRT, should not be taught in the schools. And so there are things that we just have to take control over in our education. And that's what I want to dedicate my life, my purpose, my career to, is making sure that our young people are equipped to be able to meet this moment, but also the moment of the future, that they are prepared to be the next leaders of our corporations, of our country, that they have the skills, not just what somebody determines that they should do, right? Which in some cases is equivalent to line workers. No, they are capable of being the managers, the leaders, the innovators, the creators, and the builders. And we have to wrap around them, as well as families and parents, to be able to help them to achieve that. And so that is what Compete to Succeed Educational Resources is focused on. We are making sure that school redesign is going to happen through research and development and working on creating model schools. We want to look at recruitment and retention of our teachers. Over the last 18 months, myself and a co-author, who is also a photographer, we have gone around the country and interviewed over 85 educators. So she has taken their photograph, we've gotten their stories on film and in writing, And in just about 3 or 4 months, we will be releasing our book called Raising America, A Visual Celebration of Educators. It is a book that highlights the humanity of our educators. It allows us to hear their voices. They told us that too often nobody asks them what's needed in the classroom. They're often, even though they're professionals, some with PhDs, EDDs, master's degrees, they're often told what needs to be done, even though they're considered the professionals as it relates to educating our young people. They talk about not getting paid and having to work multiple jobs just to pay their own bills, even though what they're doing is helping to build the next CEO, President of the United States, right? And so those are the conversations that we want to bring forward with that book that we are putting out in the middle of March, to be able to start have those conversations, bring those educators forward, let them tell their stories, and focus on retention and recruitment of educators. And the other piece is empowering our parents. I've come across so many parents who want the best for their students, but oftentimes they're focused on what? Providing those physical needs immediately, making sure there's food on the table, shelter, clothing, and as far as the advocacy for education, showing what is able, they have all the assets. It's just helping them to build communities so that they can leverage each other's assets to make sure that none of our young people fall through the cracks. So those are the things that we'll be focused on at Compete to Succeed. I'm excited to get into this work. I've already started working with different professors from higher education organizations, school founders, to find out what works there. I think we need to look at globally. When you look at Finland, that has the #1 school system in the world, what are they doing? Looking at Montessori, what are those things that can be done? How can AI be used to elevate our young people? You know, young people, they're rewired. If you've been around young people, they are not sitting down and writing they're spelling sentences 10 times, or writing the definitions to it's just it's incapable, and we're quite frankly we're doing them a disservice if that is how we are functioning with them. We really need to look at how do we help to educate our young people for the future and for the time that we're in now. And so I will close with just saying, and Stephen knows from my other talk where he was, I love to give a call to action so that people can take something away that they can do now that's actionable. One, I would say, mentor a young person if you're not already. Find somebody. I talk to young people all the time. I just put together a group of about 7 young adults who are ready to launch, but they have not gotten to where they need to be at this point in their lives. And I have mentors coming because they need to figure out, how do I get a career? How do I get a job? Where do I go? And I'm sure that there is some lived experience that you have had that can help a young person. The other thing I will say is literacy is a critical, critical issue right now for our young people. And so just going to the school and reading to a student can do wonders. Reading to a neighbor, a relative, a young person in your life can do wonders. 130 million Americans right now are reading at sixth grade or below reading rate in America. And that's at about 54%. So literacy is key. And then finally, I would say donate to a school or a nonprofit. This economy has nonprofits hurting right now. Our schools, when you talk about educating a young person for $12,000 a year, anybody who has kids knows that how do you do that? How do you compare with private schools where parents are paying 30,000 and they have endowments, right? How do we close the gap with that type of resource? So donating to a school, just going up, what do you all need? Do y'all need a class set of books or a nonprofit that you know that is doing work for youth development? And so that I will close there. I know that sometimes there is Q&A. There's some really interesting things that are going on in education now as they talk about, is it really possible for, them to close the Department of Education and dismantle it? Well, there's some back and forth on that, right? And there's some things that, as far as constituents go, I think on both sides of the aisle will make it very difficult to do that. But we just need to keep our hand to the pulse of education because it is impacting our community in a great way. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to share with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's great information, and thank you for sharing that. I have a few questions. So when we talk about reading, are they reading from a book or a device, or I can put my Florida accent, a device. What are they? Is it a physical book, or are they reading? Is it a combination? What are they doing?
It's both, right? You find schools that are doing both. Some books are literally just online, and they get their textbooks online. Some don't even have textbooks, or teachers may be printing out packets for students to read. You don't see textbooks anymore like how we used to have textbook checkout day and you would sign for your textbooks. There are some. And then you have some schools that are using real literature, right? Or using real documents and primary documents for students to read. But a lot of what young people are doing right now is online.
Now, has there been any study on the comprehension differences between electronic and a physical piece of paper? Is it equal? Is one advantaged over the other?
That I don't know, but what I do know is that when you talk about digital natives, they're wired to be able to understand online, right? But sometimes it's video, it's smaller chunks. Their attention span, they're not reading 25, 30 pages, right? So you're breaking that up into paragraphs. Maybe it's mixed with some video, maybe it's mixed with an activity for all of that for them to be able to comprehend. So they are learning in a very different way, which means what? For anyone who is leading a team with much younger people, you know that they probably work very differently. And a lot of that is just because of the way that they are truly wired differently from a very young age of having devices and tablets in a way that older generations did not.
Talk about a little bit of this, the I guess the disparity between Naples and I don't know if I can pronounce the other town. Uh,
Immokalee.
oh, yeah, that part.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, where you've got students who have similar learning abilities versus maybe in public education. One of the challenges I have is that a lot of times classrooms will have a mixture of students at different learning pace or learning, comprehension or abilities. I won't say abilities because everybody's able, but it's just where they are, what kind of support do they
Just
have.
need some differentiation.
Yeah, so a little bit of difference in what you saw between those two communities, because obviously that was a big disparity.
Huge disparity. You know, it was eye-opening for me. I'll never forget the PTA. They did a what's called a backwards raffle, and the grand prize was $10,000. Now, that was at the school in Naples. Although I was not there full time because I was at the other school in Immokalee, I still had 5 or 6 computers in my classroom. Immokalee, we all had to huddle around one computer to do any sort of a search,
Hmm.
right? As a teacher, I spent a lot of my own money to provide resources in Immokalee, whereas it was a matter of writing a letter to parents and I would have whatever I wanted in Naples. All of this was because of socioeconomic. Not because parents in Immokalee didn't value their kids' education. Oh, they did. In fact, they trusted us so much that they put their kids in our hand and said, we know what you're doing is right for our kid and we want them to learn. But you know what the difference was? They were getting on a bus at 5 in the morning and going out to the fields to pick crops and
Mm.
coming back. And we did school very differently. So if there was a conference, we were doing it at night, which required teachers to do what? I didn't have kids at the time, but if you had kids, now you're taking time away from your family to make sure that these young people are fine and meeting with parents, but that's what we did. So school was done very differently, but not with less passion. I would even argue to say there was even more because we had to make accommodations to support the population of students that we were working with. My students in Immokalee, I laugh now, but they taught me what a pontoon boat was and laughed when I didn't know what it was, right? Pulled out an encyclopedia because you know why? That's what they did. I was from Miami-Dade County. We didn't ride on pontoon boats. I was pretty much a first generation to college. And they went to private islands and their moms were stay at home. And so when you just talk about the differences, and if you don't have, the teachers had to work very hard to make sure that our young people got those same experiences to enrich them because there is, something to reading, writing, making sure you get the basics. But we all know as we've grown through our careers and grown throughout life, it's that exposure piece. That's why people play golf. That's why people go to dinner. That's why people travel. That's why they go to shows and etc. It's those experiences that really make the difference and help to support you. And our students in Immokalee were not really getting that. We had nonprofits that were there, and I'm not painting the picture that none of these things were paid attention to. What I'm saying is that the priority for Catholic charities and for the Guadalupe Center was to make sure that these young people had food in their pantries and clothes on their back. So the education piece of what we're talking about, what we know that makes the difference and levels the playing field, that was not the exact priority.
How do parents manage sort of the distractions? And what are your thoughts on here in Los Angeles and a couple of the places they were talking about banning cell phones in the classrooms? Because obviously there's a lot of, distractions. Growing up, many of us didn't have any type of, there was no social media, there was no cell phone.
I would say thank God, right?
We had one TV in the whole household. Growing up, I can't remember. By the time we got a second TV, I was probably like 11 or 12. So that wasn't a distraction. That was so. How is that impacting? Do you think that cell phones should be banned in the classroom, or distraction? Should parents have time out and take control of their social media so that they're able to focus? What are your thoughts on that?
I truly believe that when expectations are set, students follow them. And that's regarding anything, right? There has to be a level of expectation that in the classroom, learning will be going on. And learning can't be going on if you're playing uh, pool with your friend on iPhone through messaging. I've seen it work. I've seen it with my own kids. I've texted my kids, during school, forgetting that they're not allowed to have cell phones. And my daughter will say, Mom, I can't have my phone in class. You know why? The expectation was set. And I think if we do that and have the support of parents in that, then that can make the difference. I've seen the focus on my phone is dying, I need to get it charged. And so now we're spending 20 minutes arguing with the teacher on why I should plug up my phone. And then the teacher gets frustrated and sends the kid to ISS. And now they've missed a whole session of learning along with the other kids being distracted. So I've seen spaces where it's been a distraction, but I think if there are expectations and rules set in place, knowing, listen, these kids are attached to these phones. If we all look, our phones are probably very nearby us. That is how we function today. Giving them an opportunity, maybe it's during lunch, you can use your phone. Maybe in the hallway, there's an opportunity to use your phone, but setting the expectation that when we're in class, that is where learning is taking place. And if it's not being used for learning purposes, then your phone can't go out. And I think that that is how you get around that. That is how you support that. So not a ban, not a total ban, but expectations of usage should definitely be put in place.
Joseph shared with us in the chat here that our texting back in the day was passing notes, written down notes on the. I forgot all about that.
And throwing them, right? And hope the teacher doesn't
and hope the teacher doesn't catch it.
Right. Going down. I too, Careshia, teach kids. I do an entrepreneurial class every summer, teaching them how to create their own businesses. And as well as I'm in a fall session right now, a 6-month session in 2 months during the summer. So one of the things that we do with the kids is, well, one, we have some rules that we get to even get accepted in the program. They got to sign off that they're going to adhere to all of the rules and the do's and the nots, and all of those do's and the nots are there because somebody violated them in the past, and we just keep adding them to the list. But when we because like you said, a lot of kids don't have computers, laptops, right? So if you integrate research using their phones, using Google, in order to find out information, then they see that they can engage it like a business person does, right? So that's some of the things we do. But every now and then they think you don't see them when they're looking down at their lap. And their phones are there. It's like, okay, I see it. Put it back up on the table. Now use it to search for this. How about that? But one of the things I found in LA Unified is that the teachers are not all that creative, and they have all been instructed to do education by route. And so if you fall out of that route, then the kids are misbehaving, and then that's when they happen. So I think that's some of the problem is. He's no longer with us, but he's an educator. His name was Sir Kenneth Robinson, I think. He was from Scotland or somewhere, and he wrote a book on they take creativity out of schools at the age of 6. And at that point, everything is focused in on just very regimented education, no fun to that education so that they enjoy it. So there are some innovative schools that are out there now doing some incredible things. There's one here in Los Angeles called Da Vinci, and Da Vinci teaches on a career cluster, and the kids are treated like college students. So they get to sit out in the open air. They can call in for all, if they're not coming in, they can do office hours. So I think just like us for adults, school has to be reformatted to a certain extent that it fits with the culture that we live in. And I think when we do that, we give them freedom to use their creativity in a way that's productive instead of to not productive. So that's some of the issues. But I do have a question for you. So obviously you're in Florida and any of the southern states, and now they're wanting to pretty much change the whole education system to a religious school, and with Bible verses and spending most of their time doing that versus learning. How are you going to address that? Because isn't that becoming almost like in certain states, like George, with your governor, a mandate?
I've heard about it in Texas. I'm in Georgia right now, but I've definitely heard about it in Texas. I believe that it passed. And from my understanding, and I have a friend who works in technology, and he was actually having some early conversations with them. And because of that reason, he decided not to move forward in helping them with their educational technology around that. But I remember him asking me, he said, I know you're a Christian. What do you think about this, right? Like how how does this work? How does this play out? Or does this turn you off as a parent? Is it something that you think should happen? And what I told him is that I said, I think that religion is a very personal thing, right? It is a very personal thing. And as a parent of children who we go to church and we pray and all of those things, one, not every person is a Christian, right? And so there's that um, uh, ability to kind of learn, not just not proselytizing or changing your religion, but to respect other people, especially when you talk about coming from places where you have a lot of multicultural people who've done things differently is from a religious perspective. But also, I don't, having gone through an education program, elementary education for a bachelor's and a master's degree, I was not prepared to teach anyone about religion, right? And I think it gives too much of an opening for teachers to impose their
Interpret
own personal beliefs. And then you have these young people who are taking that in. So that is where I fall on that, right? As a Christian, I don't believe that schools are a place to teach kids about the Bible. Now, as I understand it, they want to use it more as literature, and maybe instead of reading Harry Potter, they're reading Noah or the story of Moses, or you know, allow that to happen at their place of faith, their place of worship. That is not what school is designed for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think religion starts at your home,
Mhm.
and that's where it should be taught. And then the church is your family and your village there.
Mhm.
School is for education, and I agree with you. So many people misinterpreted the Bible to what they want it to be.
That's
That
right.
you're going to be really confusing our young people not on what it truly says in the Bible, because they might do one verse and not do the other five verses that really explain it in detail, and that's a problem with to me. I had a back and forth argument on Facebook the other day, and they were going on how wonderful that was. No, it's not. You, the parent,
Mhm.
that's your responsibility. That ain't our responsibility as
Yeah.
educators. That's your responsibility. Take care of your children.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Greg had jumped in on that one.
Share with us a little bit about the role that parents should be playing in education. Here at LA Unified, I hear a lot. I work with a lot of clients in LA Unified, and I find that the teachers say that the parents are not providing any supplement to the education. They're just dropping the kids off to school, expecting the teachers to do everything. Are you seeing that same trend there in Georgia and in Florida? And is there a solution for that? Is there classes for parents, programs for the parents, so that they can be participatory in the education process?
Yeah, so the benefit of having worked at Usher's New Look is that we've done global programming. And so I've seen schools outside of the country, I've seen schools across our country. And what I know, and I have friends that are principals in various places, and we're having worked in the school system. And what I know is that parents are an integral part of the experience that students have in school, meaning they have to set the expectations. Learning starts at home. Parents truly are their kids' first teachers. And so there are some times where parents themselves may have not had the best experience in school, right? Maybe they are not up to date on what their students need to be, their children need to be doing. Maybe they're working 2 or 3 jobs, like I said earlier, to make ends meet. And so they are trusting their kids. I before I got pulled into Raising America, the book, I finished up a book that I will put out after, called Preparing Your Child to Compete to Succeed Against Privilege. And it is all about just that, Greg. It is all about understanding that as parents, we have a right and a responsibility, I believe, to ensure that our children go farther than we did. And I don't care where you're starting, right? And so a part of that is making sure that we're providing them with opportunities for exposure, that we are putting them in the right environments, that we're parenting them. And my husband and I just had a whole conversation about when my son was ready to give up the violin, or my daughter didn't want to go to training for volleyball. But as parents, we know what's best for them, right? If this is what you say you're doing or what you're participating in, then these are the things that you need to do. Now, where I come from is that time is a premium, and some parents just honestly don't have time for all of the extras. So how do we leverage our other parents, our other friends, our other communities, in being able to ensure that all of our children are well? The mayor here in Atlanta, he talked about, there is a community on, and I'm forgetting the African country now, but they greet each other by saying, "How are the children?" And that is how they determine how the village is doing. How the children are doing is how the village are doing. So we need to make sure collectively that our children are doing well. I mean, my grandparents talked about how they all help raise each other kids. And in some ways, I think we have to go back to that. But I also think it's a part of training for our young parents, a part of education for them, and a part of welcoming them into the schools and meeting them where they are and letting them know that there is no judgment here, whatever it may be, right? We want to make sure that you are an integral part of your child's life. And I think that we can then help to raise the expectations of our young people, by providing exposure for parents as well as our students. I have a mentor, Walter Robinson. He's actually from California. He was at UC Davis and UC Berkeley, but he would often say, exposure raises expectations. And I think that is very true, as far as our parents as well.
I have a position that gets met with about 50-50 acceptance and unacceptance is the concept of vocational high schools, now called career technical education. They've been removed from the LA market, but they still exist in the New York City area where I went to school, and they're very effective because I don't know. Sometimes I don't always share the feeling that every child is going to be made college ready and have the resources to get to college, but there are a tremendous amount of opportunities within we call them the trades, to come out, graduate high school, maybe work for a place for a little while, and then start your own business and be a business owner and surpass what somebody who may have come out and got a liberal arts degree and make it up. So what are your thoughts on the vocational school or now career, what they call it, CTEs?
Right. Now we're family, right, Greg?
Yeah, but you're already being recorded.
No, I listen. We all go to hairstylists, we all go to barbers, we all pay plumbers, big money, electricians, all these folks. I truly believe that there are people that is what they want to do. That is what they have the ability, the proclivity to do. You ask me to change something, I can't do it. My dad was a mechanic. That's all he ever wanted to do from the time he was 13 years old. He ended up working at the airport, being a mechanic there. That was what he wanted to do. He could fix anything. Don't you dare call a handyman to our house, right? Like he could fix it. And so I think that there are opportunities to do that. I am working with an organization now focused on architecture, but they also talk about the trades, not just in terms of fixing things, but housing developments, they need plumbers, right? That make a lot of money to pipe the whole development or run electricity through the entire thing. And so I believe that is a huge part of it. Where I tend to push back is when we make that to be the only option
Yeah,
for
yeah,
our
right,
students
right.
based upon where they're from or what we think they're capable of. And I think sometimes it gives the out for our system to be a little bit lazy in helping our young people cultivate their talents and gifts beyond what they see. They may allow behavior or acting out or lack of parental engagement to push the students into those trades. And then they say, oh, you can make $40,000 coming out of high school without a degree. Well, we all know enter a kid, a family. I mean, even now, what do they say? Eggs are $8. $40,000 does not go very far. So then how do we make sure that they are not only going to be that tradesperson, that they're not only going to be the line worker for the rest of their lives, and that people are going to be promoted over them? How do we, I think there's a missing piece in that trade piece. There's a management, there's communication, there's business development. How do we supplement the trade piece so that they also have that knowledge? So if they want to, they can create their own business, right? They can become a manager. There's a program, I believe it's at BMW, wonderful mechanic apprenticeship program. I think they start out at $65,000. There are also a few other plants here at Georgia that kind of touts those same salaries for folks coming right out of high school and trade school. But what they don't say is that they're going to hire kids out of college to come make two, three times the amount that they make to manage them. And that's my only thing. I think we're missing that piece of making sure that they are able to move up the ladder and not just be stuck in that same space for the duration of their career.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I mean, it can work because near there was Aviation High School, which was right next to Kennedy Airport. So they had a program where they would learn engine, jet engine maintenance, and graduate, would get a union job, making twice what college students were making coming out of this. So I mean, there's some value to that. Um, but it's again, it's all being active and going on there. We're getting down to the wire. I haven't been monitoring the chat. Crystal, were there any questions in the chat, or there's a time period if you want to raise your hand? Hey, here's Robin there. I didn't see Robin. He snuck in the back door. Huh? Our co-host Robin Phillips has joined us. So if you've got a quick question, then yes,
We got a couple of statements that are in there in regards to the CTE from Shamika. She said there are programs. Then the CTE programs had professional teachers. They spend most of their time trying to keep challenging to keep the children on task, I guess is what she's saying. Also,
yeah, I'm familiar with LA Unified. They don't have a CTE school. They're starting to try to get to that area, but they really don't have that. But yes, Renee has her hand. Renee, and anybody else, if you've got a quick question
I'd like to ask, you've talked about so much that you're doing. How many people are in your organization helping you get this done in your company?
So right now it's me, but I will tell you, I have a network of evaluators. I have a network of marketing folks. I have a network of research and development folks who we are looking at ways to partner to do this work. So it will not be a single person thing. I definitely believe it's going to be pulling folks in their area of expertise to support this work.
Okay, thank you. I was worried.
No.
I would like to introduce. We have a young lady that actually has an education thing called the Knowledge Shop. Her name is Yolanda Beckles, and she is absolutely amazing. Very much same spirit as you. She's from Great Britain. but a black woman, Nigerian, I think. She's incredible. I mean, she is a fighter. They recently took away the black, what's that program that she,
They didn't take it away BSAP, but they had to open it up to to anyone. Because they were saying that it can't discriminate, it can't exclude somebody based on skin color.
Okay, so the same thing
Black
with the
Student Achievement Program, but it still exists. Yeah,
the DEI. So I'm gonna share and send you her information. You
Please.
guys would be awesome. She created a parent program called NAPPY, and it's a coalition of parents working together. So that might be something you can introduce as well. But you'll love her. She'll love you.
I would love to meet her.
Because she needs she needs that same in a number of people behind her fighting for what she believes, in the STEM piece. And her kids are all major mathematics and mathematicians because that's where they learn from her. So I'll make that introduction. She would be great to be in your core of expertise. And because you guys have that same energy,
yep.
I commend
and block
you.
out a good chunk of time to have that conversation too.
Okay. There you go, Renee. So I won't be by myself for sure. I appreciate you.
I recommend her highly, and she's got those parents hooked.
Good.
They are doing almost as much work as she's doing.
Right.
Got them hooked.
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing. You will get, but I want to commend you because I've been working with kids. That's part of my business philosophy. I give back to children, and I do that through education and support. I actually, when it started, I was would go to around LA. There's a reading group, as you were saying. So there, and in fact, it just popped up on my screen. And you go to different schools and you read to the kids. That's all you do is just sit and read to them. So that's how I kind of Girl Scouts and all of that sort of stuff. And I've always worked with kids. So now I run this, run this education entrepreneurial program to introduce them to other ways other than just traditional career opportunities for them that don't fit. So thank you so much for all of your help, all of your work in that area, because our kids are our future. And if we don't put it in, we know, especially our Black children, they're not getting, unless their parents put them in very exclusive and spend a lot of money and get them in, fight to get them in really great schools. The majority of our children get very limited education. My nephew is also in education. He works at a program called PAL. Yesterday, he showed us this note where this kid had wrote, it looked like he had been raped. He drew pictures with his mommy over here, him over here, and then something looked like a square, and him and this other person, and him in the bed. And so my nephew didn't know what to do. So he's he has to call the police. So he called the police. Really, where it turned out to be was his friend Emmanuel had pushed him down. This was a picture that he grew, but he sounded out happy, but it looked like rape and not HAPE. It was a major catastrophe. And I was like, okay, y'all need a spelling bee for the kids so they at least know how to spell, so you'll bring out the whole police department. And because you have to report things that look like he drew that his knees were hurt. It was blood on the knee. We're like, oh my God, this is like the worst case ever. The police said that. This is the worst case I've ever seen in my life. And then when they asked him, he goes, no, it was a note that Emmanuel pushed me down. I hurt my knees and it made me sad. Whoa.
I mean, why did they start with a question?
And we Robin's here. Please welcome Robin Billups. She's one of our co-hosts. I didn't recognize her at first. She's incognito.
You guys, I'm at the City of Hope. I had to give, but I wanted to chime in. I needed to share something. I will definitely listen to your show so that I can catch up, because you're in Atlanta. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I got some folks down there who would love to help. Would definitely love to help. And then you're part of the community briefing family now. So don't do without. This is what we do. Our whole mission is to support and advocate and be alert and be advocates in 2025. So thank you. But I needed to come on today, you guys. I'm in between my appointments. I just needed to thank our team And the coalition that our team is building between the BBA, Recycling Black Dollars, Community Briefing, Crenshaw Chamber of Commerce, and all of these other organizations. JC from the Crenshaw Chamber has pulled together this coalition. We had a meeting on Friday for the project that we've been working on, the Infrastructure, Transit, and Housing Development Project. The portal has been open with the Department of Transportation as of Tuesday this week coming up. We're applying for $12 billion.
So he got all the signatures.
$12 billion. $12 billion to get started on this project. You know, the election made us all crazy, but what it is doing is pushing people to get something done. So we know for a fact that while the portal is open, we're drafting everything. We're talking to an attorney this afternoon. I just needed to thank you guys for standing in the gap, listening to us, bitch, moan, complain, carrying, propping us up on our leaning side when we get sad about this. We are about to do something together that is going to be monumental. And the community briefing team in particular, Sarah Harris and the BBA in particular, and Recycling Black Dollars, those three foundational organizations has been the impetus for us to get to where we are. Michael's been working on this all of his life, but really for the last 5 years. I've been working with him for the last 3 years. Nobody's getting paid. But in a minute, if the Lord is willing and the creek don't rise, we're about to get paid, y'all.
All righty. Well,
And
we're so happy. Congratulations.
And we're about to improve 100-year-old infrastructure, 30-year-old transit stations, and housing that's owned by seniors, Black and brown seniors who don't have the money to improve the where they live. So again, I just wanted to say thank you. My mantra is gratitude is a memory of the heart. Let's keep making a bunch of memories because you guys you're rocking it right now as we close out this year. I just needed to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that last night. So I'm so happy he got that and he was able to apply for it. And awesome. We got great things happening. And this is what we need to happen. Us as Black people coming together in every area of our lives, in our families' lives that need support. And so as a village, this is what we're supposed to do. And so I commend everyone that is working in the spaces that they are in, doing amazing things. But yeah, let's close our silos. This is my utopia, as I said. And let's all work together because we can do so much more with the power of us than the power of anybody else. And as in the words of George Fraser, there is no white hope coming to save us. and if we didn't get that before, we should have gotten that on November 5th. Careshia, we want to thank you so much. Can you put your contact information in the chat? So if anyone else, I know we have quite a few people here, Theron, Gordon, that are in the education or have people, connections that are in there. And let's build, that coalition doesn't have to just be in Atlanta. It can be nationwide. The more people that are working together, across the nation, because the southern states guys are going to need us. Those of us that are in blue states, they're going to need us because it's going to be disastrous come next year. The 20th.
Co-host,
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question
You certainly can.
the
Guy,
guest?
this is my business partner and the co-host of the Business Zone, the other podcast that I participate. I'm in. And that's Gilbert.
Yeah, man.
Hello, Miss Careshia.
Hi.
How are the children?
The children will be well.
So,
do they do that in Jamaica, Gilbert?
What? How are the children?
The children? Yeah.
No. Oh. They ask, how is the money?
Oh.
So, Miss Careshia, what ages are the children that you provide services for?
Well, when I was at Usher's New Look, it was middle school, high school, and college. But currently, I am working more so with thought leaders and developers of education. I'm not doing direct services at this time, but it will be focused on K through 12 education, the research and development that we're doing.
So the reason I asked that, my co-host there, Crystal, she runs a program. It's called the Biz Camp
Yeah.
for Kids.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about lines up directly with what she does. So I was wondering if perhaps you guys could do a partnership where you guys establish an entrepreneurship program for these young ones, because I've gone through an experience over the last 20 years going to college and taking out those student loans from the student loan mafia. And, I end up spending like 3 times the amount paying it back. So I don't think our kids should have to go through that, especially if many of them are going to go into jobs after graduating colleges. And, these are dead end jobs where they're not going to make their money back anyway from those student loans. So I believe entrepreneurship is the way for many of our kids. So if that's something that you're open to, I believe, you partnering with my co-host Crystal and I could lend my services to that too, because we're business coaches. We teach a lot of entrepreneurs. She teaches the youth as well as adults, and her kids are champions. Every year they compete throughout the country and they win first, second, third places. I know she doesn't like to talk about it, but I like to give her flowers. So the same thing can be done for your kids as well. And we've got a wealth of information and different services that we can help these kids with. So just a little something, I'm wondering if that's something you might want to consider for these kids.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I'm in the community briefing family now. So,
Okay.
whatever we can do to partner to support our young people. And that's another thing, right? Entrepreneurship education in schools. Why not? Why does it just have to be like a special school or a theme school or a magnet school?
Right.
If we find that that's where our young people are going. And when I was at UNL, overwhelmingly young people said they wanted to start their own businesses.
Good. Because the one thing I tell my entrepreneurs is that, hey, you can't get rich working for someone else, but you
Yeah.
can get rich being an entrepreneur, because there's so many government contracts out there that we prep small businesses for. As a matter of fact, I got a class that I teach in the next 3 hours on that. So yeah, I think that should be, something we can talk about. I know the show is ending right now, but we do have another podcast called The Business Zone. So maybe we can invite you to be a guest on that one.
Shameless plug.
All right.
Shameless plug.
I was already going
Well,
to
listen, I appreciate
Let me-
y'all so much for having me on. I will definitely be back. And I have already shared this with my tribe, that this exists and that they need to be a part of it. So thank you so much. And thank you, Stephen, for the invite.
Awesome.
You're
Awesome.
welcome.
Thank you
And
so
as we
much.
wrap up, I'd like to pass the mic over to Crystal to tell us about next week's guests.
All right. So next week, guys, is going to be our last show for the 2024 season, and we're going to be having some incredible guests, some of you possibly, in 2025. So come on out. We have Audra Bryant. She is an incredible young lady. She, at 18 months old, suffered an accident with a good part of her body was burned. And so she spent her whole childhood and adult life trying to deal with and cope with the scars that was on her body. But as a result of that, she came out of that on the other side with some amazing talent. She's a singer. She's a coach. She coaches other people that have not just external scars, but also internal scars. So come on back next week at 11 a.m. and meet Audra. She is incredible. She actually has a number of, she has a book out there, and a number of songs that she's created. So please come on back next week. We will see you. Go over to our YouTube channel, which is Community Briefing. And we have an archive of all last 3 years of our shows. So check them out. And please come back. Tell a friend. We want this to be the place every Thursday at 11 a.m. is already on your calendar to come out and hear who we have here, because this is us introducing you to our community and our community to our leaders and stakeholders. And we want to thank you, Careshia. thank you for all that you do, and thank you for being a visitor. We want to thank all of our regulars, Miss Renee. I got to see Renee for the second time I've seen Renee in person, and Emma, and everyone last night. That we had such a great time with at the Christmas holiday mixer that Miss Sarah did. It was awesome. Can't wait to the next one. I think we should have all our events at the new townhouse.
I think you should invite all these guests on the business zone as well.
And then come over on Friday at 3:00 to the business zone. We are
another shameless plug.
Another shameless plug on Facebook and LinkedIn and the several Facebooks. So just come on over there, and YouTube. So with that, guys, we want to thank you. Have a great day. And I hope you guys are all got your Christmas stuff together. I got to go do some Christmas something today, shopping. And Careshia, you have a wonderful holiday, you and your family. And the rest of you guys, we'll see you all next Thursday. Thank you. And we got to see Stephen last night. We hadn't seen Stephen in a long time.
Live and in color, right?
Live and in color.
Emma, please give me a call. I miss you.
All righty, guys. Simone, hello, welcome. Glad to have you.
I will.
Okay. See you guys the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So this is going to be the end of this.